everybody, it's Lisa Burningham. For today's project, I have braved 7 years bad luck to show you how to make this broken mirror Christmas tree, and I think it was worth it. My inspiration for this piece came a while back when I was watching Robeson on YouTube, and she made a broken mirror Christmas tree, and I absolutely loved it. And then a little later, I was scrolling through Etsy for some design inspiration, and I came across this broken mirror Christmas tree again, and it just reminded me how much I loved it in the first place. Now, my inspiration piece, this one on Etsy, goes for $425. That's a lot, but don't worry because the shipping is free. But I think that we can do much better, and in fact, I know that we can because I made my broken mirror Christmas tree for $24. First, I needed to come up with a frame. I found a 2 foot wide by 4 foot tall piece of wood at Lowe's. It was a screaming deal. It was only $6.58. I loved the swirls in the grain, and I really wanted to highlight those, and so what I decided to do was to stain it in this Minwax Pickeled Oak stain. That way it was still stained, it was a little more transparent, and it would really highlight all the swirls in the grain. So I painted on the stain with a sponge brush across the entire surface of the wood. Then I removed the excess stain with a paper towel. I let the stain dry for several hours before flipping it over, and I repeated the process on the other side. I painted the entire surface with this stain, and then I wiped it down with a paper towel. I really love the way this almost transparent stain highlights the wood grain while still remaining a neutral backdrop so that the Christmas tree can take center stage. The next step was to add some trim to the perimeter of my board. This way it would create a frame effect. The trim that I'm using is leftover from a previous project, so it's not going to cost me any extra money. And the best part about this is that I get to break out my Mitre Saw. I love getting this saw out. It makes me feel like a professional, like I'm super cool. So I got my saw out, and at first I measured my trim to get the exact size that I needed for each of the 4 pieces of wood that would go on each side of the frame. Then I took my saw and I cut some 45-degree angles, and I repeated this process until each piece of wood was cut to the correct size. It is an honor for me to be co-hosting this month's Look for Less with Yami the Latina next door. If you don't know Yami, she is so talented. She is creative, and she makes one-of-a-kind pieces that are so unique and special. I will leave a link to Yami's channel in my description box below, as well as a link to the playlist so you can see all of the Look for Less projects that everybody came up with. Okay, back to the DIY. I'm going to get a sponge brush, and I'm going to liberally paint each piece of trim in the Pickeled Oak stain. Then I'm going to get a paper towel and wipe off any excess stain, and then let the trim pieces dry completely. I added some liquid nails to the back of my trim, and then I placed it firmly on the board and then let it dry for several hours. Even though we used some liquid nails on our trim, I'm going to go back through with my nail gun and put a few finishing nails in through the back into the trim to secure it together. The final step was to fill in the corner edges with a little wood filler so there wouldn't be any gaps in the seams where the trim came together. Alright, now that our base is completely finished and dried, it's time to move on to the fun part, and that is breaking the mirror. Now, I purchased this mirror at Walmart. It was only $6.44, and for the size, I think that that is a great deal. The next step is to take a thick Contractors garbage sack and place my mirror inside. Then I took a second bag and placed it over the top to double bag the mirror for extra safety precautions. All right, I'm going to be using some safety goggles, and then also I have some gloves with a really thick coating on it so they're not just plastic gloves. This will protect my hands just in case any rogue pieces of mirror go flying anywhere. And as you saw, I put my mirror into some industrial sized leaf kind of garden trash bags. They're really thick, so if there's any extra mirror, it will not come through these bags. And then I have a hammer. One other thing to remember is keep it on a hard, flat surface. A table will maybe bounce around a little bit, so on the ground is gonna work really well for me. So here we go. Wish me luck. Hope this is a good idea. If you're having a hard time breaking the glass with this side, flip it around to the other side and that will work really well. Once I was finished breaking my mirror, I peeked inside the bag to make sure that the pieces were the size that I wanted. When I was satisfied, I took the mirror very carefully out of those lawn bags, and then I placed it right back on top of the lawn bag. Now it's time to sort my mirror pieces. I took the back of a hammer and I pulled up the mirror pieces, and then I began to sort them out individually by size. On the back side of this particular mirror was a thick piece of paper. So each individual piece of mirror had to be peeled away from the paper, which was a little time consuming, but I think that it really prevented that mirror from splintering and shattering everywhere, kind of kept it together, so I was grateful for the paper. It didn't really bother me to pull that off. During this process, I did keep my thick gloves on and my safety goggles. I did a dry run of the placement of my mirrored pieces to create my Christmas tree shape before I permanently glued it to the wood frame. I simply laid out my various shapes on a large piece of cardboard until I got the design that I wanted. To transfer the pieces from my cardboard to the frame, I placed them right next to each other. I started at the top with the star. I continued to transfer the pieces of mirror from my poster board to my wood board until each piece was in the perfect spot to shape my Christmas tree. To the back of my mirrored pieces, I'm adding E6000. Now, I actually ended up using 2 full bottles of this E6000 because I really wanted those pieces to be stuck well to my board. The last thing you want are some mirrored pieces coming down on you after you have it hung up on your wall. So I wanted to make sure they were stuck on there really well. So I added a liberal amount to the back of each of the mirrored pieces, and I slowly and methodically worked my way down the tree until each piece had been glued in place, and then I let the glue dry for 24 hours. To the back of my frame, I'm adding some frame hooks that I got from an old picture frame that I wasn't using anymore. So again, this isn't going to cost me any additional money. Once those hooks were on, I hung up my picture on the wall right above the Bombay chest in my office. That way I can enjoy it all season long. To add some more seasonal detail to my display, I decided to add some of these beautiful snowflakes. I hung them from the ceiling. What I did was I got some fishing line and I tied it to the snowflake, and then I got a thumbtack and I wrapped the fishing line around the thumbtack, and then I poked it into the ceiling at various heights. The flurry of snowflakes adds such a wintry feeling to my display. To the surface of my Bombay chest, I'm going to be adding a thick, lush garland filled with twinkly lights, copper and gold mesh bows, a variety of gold poinsettias, and plenty of stems of berries to make the garland look full and lush. In the center, I have this set of wood skis, and the wood stain on these wood skis match perfectly with the wood stain that's on the board for my tree. And finally, I added some copper mercury glass candlesticks and my yarn cone Christmas trees that I made last year. So let's quickly go over the costs of our project. And like always, I'm gonna round because it's just easier to do math that way. So the wood was $6.50. The mirror was $6.50. The stain was $5 and the 2 tubes of E6000 was $6. I had everything else. So if you add all that together, it's $24. That is a savings of $401 over our inspiration piece. I am so thrilled with the way that this turned out. I'm actually disappointed that I didn't do this project earlier, but now I have a beautiful piece of seasonal decor that I can keep and display for years to come. And you guys, let's consider, I used my miter saw, my nail gun, a hammer, and was completely surrounded by shards of broken mirror this entire process. I didn't get one single scratch. Look, all my fingers are still here. My eyeballs are intact. So I would have to say that breaking this mirror wasn't bad luck at all. A big thanks again to Yami for the opportunity to co-host this collaboration with her today. And if you're looking for other Christmas inspiration, I have an entire playlist that will have a lot of decor and decorating ideas for you. Thank you so much for watching.